The cold seeped into her bones. Shirin felt it, a persistent ache, despite the thick uniform. 9 shadows moved with practiced silence behind her. These were her women, her sisters. Tonight, they were not Khamenei's elite guard. Tonight, they were fugitives. Their escape began now, under the indifferent gaze of the distant stars. They had one chance. Shirin knew the weight of expectation. For 38 years, her life was a meticulously constructed edifice of duty, faith, and unwavering service. She served the Islamic Republic, not merely with her body, but with her very soul. From her childhood in Tehran's Narmak district, where the scent of baking bread mixed with the exhaust fumes of rush hour, she had been taught the sacred purpose of the revolution. Her Baba, a stern but fair judge before the revolution, had always spoken of justice. After 1979, his words shifted, aligning with the new order, always emphasizing divine justice, the mizan balanced by God's will. He had given her a small silver scale pendant then, a symbol she wore every day, believing it represented the revolution's unwavering commitment to righteousness. She joined the Basij at 16, a zealous recruit, ready to defend Iran from perceived internal and external enemies. Her sharp mind and physical prowess quickly caught the attention of her superiors. She excelled in training, mastering combat techniques, surveillance, and tactical command. Her dedication was absolute. She believed in the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the rightful successor, the Vali Faqih, divinely appointed to guide the nation. He was Iran's shield against the moral decay of the West, the protector of its Islamic identity. Her rise was swift. By 25, she was an officer in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. By 32, she was handpicked for the Zainab Brigade, an elite, highly secretive all-female unit within the Ansar al-Mahdi Protection Unit. Their mission: personal security for high-ranking clerical figures, their families, and the supreme leader's inner circle. They were the silent guardians, the unseen protectors, disciplined, loyal, unquestioning. Shirin's daily life was a paradox of austerity and profound significance. The barracks, located within a heavily secured compound in northern Tehran, were Spartan. Metal bunk beds, lockers, a shared musalla for prayers. Yet every morning, as the adhan echoed through the compound, she felt a surge of pride. She was part of something sacred, something vast. She oversaw a squad of 9 women, each personally vetted, each committed. They were her sisters, her extended family. She trained them, disciplined them, but also cared for them. She knew their hopes, their small fears. Marzi, the quiet marksman from Shiraz, who dreamed of teaching art. Zoreh, the agile medic, always humming folk songs under her breath. Mina, the youngest, barely 20, whose letters home to her mother in Isfahan Shirin sometimes glimpsed, full of proud promises. Shirin was divorced. Her husband, a low-ranking government official, found her dedication to the IRGC too intense, too consuming. He wanted a more traditional wife. Shirin wanted purpose. Her daughter, Parvana, was 17 now, studying electrical engineering in London, a privilege secured through a family connection to the Ministry of Science. Shirin rarely saw her, but their weekly video calls were the only crack in her disciplined facade. During those calls, Shirin allowed herself to smile freely, to speak of normal things, Parvaneh's studies, London's dreary weather, her hopes for a brighter future. Shirin believed her work secured that future, that freedom for Parvaneh. She believed she was building a better Iran for her. The uniforms were always pristine, the black chador meticulously draped, hiding any hint of personal expression. Their faces, though often tired, held a practiced serenity, a mask of unwavering resolve. Shirin learned to read the subtle shifts in her women's eyes, the slight clench of a jaw, the faint tremor of hands after an intense drill. She was their commander, their mentor, their protector. She ensured they followed every rule, every protocol, not just for the sake of discipline, but because she believed these rules guarded their very souls, keeping them pure and strong for the service of the revolution. She believed in the divine chain of command, from God to the prophet, to the imams, to the supreme leader. She was a link in that chain. Her purpose was clear, her path illuminated by faith. She was a sentinel, a guardian of the faith, a soldier for God. Every sunrise, every sunset, her belief reaffirmed itself. The system was flawed. Yes, humans were flawed. But the idea of the Islamic Revolution, the idea of justice guided by faith, remained pure. Or so she thought. The air in the secure observation room was thick with the scent of disinfectant and stale cigarette smoke. Shirin had been on guard duty for 3 days, stationed within the perimeter of a nondescript annex near Evan Prison. This wasn't a usual post for the Zainab Brigade. They were VIP protectors, not prison observers. But orders were orders. Her squad, -2 on rotation, was nearby, securing the outer corridors. She watched the blank wall of the interrogation room through the one-way mirror. Her fingers, calloused from years of weapon training, worried the cool metal of her Mizan pendant under her uniform. Then they brought her in. A girl, young, maybe 16, 17, Parvane's age. Her chador was askew, her face pale, streaked with dust. Her eyes, wide and terrified, darted around the small, windowless room. Shirin felt a sudden, inexplicable lurch in her stomach. This was not a hardened dissident. This was a child. The file stated she was a student, arrested during the recent protests in Ekbatan, accused of shouting "woman, life, freedom," and defacing a Basij mural. A minor infraction, Shirin thought. Something that should warrant a stern lecture. Maybe a fine. Not this. 2 interrogators entered. Their faces were grim, hardened. They didn't even introduce themselves. They simply began. Questions barked, accusations hurled. The girl, whose name Shirin learned from the sparse report was Zara, stammered denials, then pleas. Her voice was thin, reedy, breaking. Shirin watched, a knot tightening in her chest. This wasn't about extracting information. This was about breaking a spirit. The interrogators didn't touch her directly at first. They played psychological games. They threatened her family, described in chilling detail what would happen to her parents, her younger siblings. Zara sobbed, tears cutting clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. Shirin felt her breath hitch. She saw Parvane's face, superimposed over Zara's. Parvane, her bright, independent daughter, who loved to argue and question everything. The image seared into Shirin's mind. One interrogator, a burly man with a perpetual sneer, produced a small, laminated photo. It was Zara, smiling, her hair uncovered, standing next to a boy in a park. "Look at this degeneracy," he spat, holding it close to her face. "This is what you defend? This filth?" He tore the photo in half. Zara cried out, a raw animal sound. The other interrogator, a woman with cold, unblinking eyes, began to list names, false confessions, implicating Zara in fabricated plots. The interrogation intensified. The questions became absurd, demanding confessions to acts Zara clearly hadn't committed. Shirin watched the girl's hope drain away, replaced by a deep, hollow despair. She stopped crying. She just stared at the wall, her eyes vacant. Shirin felt a cold dread settle over her. This wasn't justice. This wasn't the Mizan. This was cruelty for its own sake. Suddenly, the male interrogator struck Zara across the face. Not a brutal blow, not yet, but a sharp, stinging slap that snapped her head back. It was a warning, a demonstration of power. Zara barely reacted. Her eyes remained empty. The interrogator raised his hand again, and this time, Shirin felt a primal scream catch in her throat. She gripped her Mizan pendant so tightly the silver dug into her palm. Her orders were clear. Observe. Do not interfere. The Zainab Brigade stood outside, their rifles ready. But here, behind this glass, Shirin was utterly alone, a silent witness to a perversion of everything she had sworn to protect. The interrogation continued for hours. They subjected Zara to relentless psychological torment, threats, humiliation. Physically, they kept it contained, avoiding visible marks, but the damage was profound. Shirin watched, helpless. The girl's spirit was being systematically dismantled, piece by agonizing piece. She was just a child who dared to speak. Shirin remembered her own fiery idealism, her youthful certainty. She had believed she was protecting such youth, not crushing it. Finally, the interrogators left, closing the door with a chilling click. Zara was alone. Shirin expected guards to come, to take her away, but minutes ticked by. Silence. Zara slowly, mechanically, pulled a small hairpin from her headscarf. Her movements were deliberate, almost serene. Shirin's blood ran cold. She knew what was coming. Zara began to scratch at her wrist, slowly, methodically. The hairpin was blunt, the skin resistant, but she persevered. A faint line of red appeared. Shirin pounded on the glass. A silent, desperate act. No sound. No one could hear her. She was locked in, an unwilling voyeur. "Stop," she mouthed, her voice hoarse, unheard. "Stop, please." Zara didn't look up. She kept scratching, her eyes fixed on the task. Shirin saw the deep, raw despair in her young face. This wasn't a plea for attention. This was an attempt to simply end it. Shirin watched, utterly paralyzed, as the girl's blood welled, slowly, inexorably. A small pool of red bloomed on her pale wrist. Shirin felt her heart rip. She could do nothing, absolutely nothing. It was the hardest moment of her life. She was a soldier, a commander, yet she was powerless to save a child from herself. A child driven to this point by the very system Shirin represented. The silver mizan felt like lead in her hand, heavy, mocking. Justice, she realized with a sickening clarity, had vanished. The image of Zara, scratching at her wrist, haunted Shirin. It played on an endless loop behind her eyes. The cold dread had solidified into a heavy, suffocating weight. She had witnessed countless arrests, interrogations, even public executions. She had always rationalized them, seeing them as necessary evils, deterrents, upholding the sacred order of the revolution. But Zara was different. Zara was a mirror, reflecting her own daughter's potential fate, reflecting the innocent youth she had sworn to protect, now being systematically destroyed by the very hands she served. Shirin returned to the barracks, the sterile smell of the compound now seeming to cling to her like a shroud. The metallic taste of fear, or perhaps disgust, was on her tongue. Her squad, her 9 women, greeted her with their usual disciplined respect. Marzi offered her a cup of hot chai. Zoreh, ever observant, noticed the faint tremor in Shirin's hands. Shirin waved it off, citing fatigue. But inside, a chasm had opened. She looked at her women. Mina, still full of youthful idealism. Harissa, the quiet strategist, her mind sharp as a blade. Khamenei, the eldest, a widow whose late husband was a shaheed. They believed. They truly believed in the purity of their mission. Shirin had instilled that belief in them. She had been their rock, their example of unwavering loyalty. But now, that rock was crumbling. The mizan around her neck felt like a branding iron, scorching her skin with its hypocrisy. The justice her father spoke of, the justice she thought she served, was a lie. It was a tool of oppression. Sleep offered no respite. Zara's hollow eyes, Parvineh's face superimposed on hers, the slow, deliberate scratching. Shirin woke in a cold sweat. She slipped out of her bunk, careful not to disturb her sleeping squad, and walked to the small, shared prayer room. She knelt on the worn carpet, but the words of the dua caught in her throat. How could she pray for strength, for guidance, when her entire world had just shattered? How could she ask for blessing for a system that did this? She thought of the orders. Always, the orders. Unquestioning obedience, the bedrock of their training. But what if the orders were wrong? What if the system itself had become corrupt, not by external enemies, but by its own internal rot? Her mind, trained for decades to accept, to defend, now began to question, to dissect. Every act of repression she had witnessed, every whispered fear she had ignored, now came flooding back, reframed in this brutal new light. The beatings of protesters, the forced confessions, the disappearances, they were not isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a disease that had metastasized within the heart of the revolution. The next few days were a blur. Shirin moved through her duties mechanically. She led drills, inspected equipment, reviewed reports. But her mind was elsewhere, dissecting, calculating. She saw the fear in the eyes of ordinary citizens, the forced smiles, the careful whispers. She saw the exhaustion in her own soldiers, the subtle signs of disillusionment that she had previously dismissed as minor discipline issues. One evening, after the lights were out, she overheard Mina whispering to Zoreh, "Did you hear about the student from Ekbatan? They say she's gone." Zoreh shushed her, glancing nervously towards Shirin's bunk. But Shirin had heard. The system was swallowing its children, and she was a part of it. The thought was a bitter poison. She fingered her mizzen. Her father, a man of quiet integrity, had taught her that justice was absolute, a divine principle that superseded human laws. He would have been horrified. He had believed in the promise of the revolution, in its stated goal of establishing a truly just Islamic society. But what had it become? A leviathan, devouring its own. Her loyalty, once an unshakable mountain, was now a crumbling cliff face. The supreme leader, once her infallible guide, now seemed a distant, cold figure, detached from the human cost of his decrees. The revolution, once a sacred endeavor, now felt like a gilded cage, trapping not just the populace, but even its most devoted servants. She saw a future where her women, her sisters, could easily become Zara or become her tormentors. She could not, would not, allow that. A decision, cold and resolute, formed in the deepest part of her being. She had to act, not for herself alone, for them, for Parvane, for true justice. The decision was like a shard of ice, sharp and clear. Shirin knew the risks. Defection from Khamenei's personal guard was unthinkable. It meant certain death, or worse, for herself and anyone involved. But the alternative, continuing to serve a system that devoured its own, that crushed innocence, was unbearable. She had to get her women out. She began to observe her squad with a new intensity. Who showed flickers of doubt? Who carried a secret burden? Marzia, the marksman, had grown unusually quiet, her usual lightheartedness replaced by a somber gaze after a particularly brutal crackdown on a women's protest near Azadi Square. Zora, the medic, meticulously tended to minor injuries, but Shirin often saw her staring into space, her hands clenched. Mina, the youngest, once so eager, now moved with a palpable apprehension. Shirin recognized these signs. They were not unique to her. The rot was spreading. Her plan began as a faint whisper in her mind, a dangerous fantasy. It slowly coalesced into a desperate, detailed strategy. The first step was assessment. She needed to know who would follow her, not just out of discipline, but out of a shared, unspoken disillusionment. One night, during a routine patrol of the compound's eastern perimeter, a section known for its dead spots in surveillance, Shirin spoke to Marzi. The air was cool, smelling of damp earth. "Marzia," Shirin said, her voice low, "do you believe we are still serving justice?" Marzi paused, her grip tightening on her rifle. "Commander, answer me truthfully, soldier." Marzia met her gaze. I don't know anymore, Commander. My conscience, it hurts." Her voice was barely audible. Shirin nodded. "Mine too." That was the crack she needed. Over the next 2 weeks, under the guise of specialized training or late-night equipment checks, Shirin had similar, carefully worded conversations with each of her 9 women. She didn't reveal her full intentions. Not yet. She spoke of the revolution's true ideals, contrasted with its current reality. She spoke of the weight of their consciences. She watched their eyes. She listened to their silences. Each woman, in her own way, expressed a nascent doubt, a burgeoning unease. Parisa, the strategist, simply looked at Shirin and said, "The scales are tipped, Commander." Khamenei, the widow, after a long silence, whispered, "Shahid, my husband died for this?" The biggest hurdle was the escape route. Evading IRGC surveillance and border patrols required meticulous planning. Shirin's years in the Zainab Brigade had given her invaluable knowledge of internal security protocols, blind spots, and patrol schedules. She knew the mountainous border with Iraqi Kurdistan was treacherous, but less fortified than the western frontier. It was a known route for smugglers. That was their only option. She needed an external contact. Years ago, during a counter-smuggling operation in the Kurdish regions, Shirin had encountered a local guide named Kawan. He was a savvy, taciturn man, knowledgeable of the mountains, caught between loyalty to his people and a pragmatic need to survive. Shirin had spared him once from a harsher sentence, recognizing a flicker of honesty in his defiant eyes. She hoped he would remember. She still had his contact number, scrawled on a scrap of paper, hidden deep in her personal prayer book. The symbolic object, the silver mizan, became a constant, heavy reminder. Shirin polished it ceaselessly, its cold metal a counterpoint to the burning uncertainty in her heart. It was her anchor, her guide, her Baba's legacy. She began to discreetly gather supplies, small stashes of non-traceable cash from savings, emergency rations, basic medical supplies from Zore's kit, who, understanding Shirin's urgency, never asked questions. Parisa, using her knowledge of secure communications, helped Shirin craft encrypted messages to Kawan, making contact under the guise of a humanitarian aid mission for a tribal elder. Kawan's reply was terse. The mountain is awake. Cost is high. A coded confirmation. He was in. The final piece was the timing. A shift change, a religious holiday, a period of heightened internal security somewhere else, drawing resources away. Shirin found it. A planned IRGC exercise in the western provinces, coinciding with a rare full moon, offering light but also camouflage for their initial trek. The night of the 15th of Tyr, 1402, just 2 weeks away. She called a final meeting. This time there was no pretense. Shirin stood before her 9 women, their faces shadowed in the dim light of the storage room. Her voice was steady, calm. "Sisters," she began, "what we have built, what we believed in, has been corrupted. The justice we served has become oppression. I will not stand by and watch you become either victims or perpetrators of this injustice." She laid out the plan, the risks, the near-certain death if they were caught. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then Marzi stepped forward. "I am with you, Commander." Then Zore. Then Parisa. Each one in turn nodded, their eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resolute determination. Mina, the youngest, hesitated, her lip trembling. Shirin placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mina, you can choose to stay. No one will blame you." Mina looked at Shirin, then at her comrades. "No, Commander. I am with my sisters." Shirin felt a surge of fierce pride, a deep, maternal protectiveness. These were her women, and she would lead them to freedom, or die trying. The night arrived, a suffocating shroud of expectation. The air was thick with the scent of oleander and exhaust from distant traffic, a familiar Tehran fragrance that now felt like a farewell. Shirin wore her standard uniform, as did the others, but underneath, she had strapped a small pouch with her precious Mizan pendant and a few hundred US$. Each woman carried only what was essential: a small backpack with water, a few dates, a compass, and their service pistols. They moved with the silent discipline honed over years in Khamenei's personal guard. Their designated escape point was the compound's eastern gate, usually less guarded due to its proximity to a civilian residential area. Shirin knew the night watchman, an older Basij volunteer named Reza, was known to nap during the later hours, relying on the sophisticated perimeter sensors. But those sensors had blind spots, carefully memorized by Shirin over countless drills. The initial plan: slip past Reza, use a preset code to disable the outer gate lock for precisely 90 seconds, and vanish into the maze of narrow kuches bordering the compound. The hardest part would be the timing. They needed to move as a single, coordinated entity. At 0217, the compound was hushed. Only the distant hum of generators and the occasional bark of a stray dog broke the silence. Shirin gave the silent signal. Marzi, the marksman, moved first, a ghost in the shadows, scouting ahead. Zora followed, her movements fluid. One by one, the 9 women filtered out of their barracks, converging at a hidden alcove near the gate. The air was cool, carrying a faint metallic tang. Shirin felt her heart hammering, a frantic drum against her ribs. Her uniform, usually a symbol of strength, now felt like a heavy burden, a constant reminder of the life they were abandoning. Reza was exactly where Shirin expected him, slumped in his chair, head lolling. The key panel was exposed. Parisa, the tech expert, moved forward. Her fingers, usually so steady with a rifle, trembled slightly as she input the complex override sequence Shirin had observed weeks ago. The silence stretched, unbearable. A faint click. The red light on the panel turned green. "Go!" Parisa whispered, her voice tight. Shirin led the way. They slipped through the partially open gate, moving with a controlled urgency. They stayed close to the wall, their shadows long and distorted by the sparse streetlights. The residential kuches were deserted. They moved swiftly, a silent procession of black chadors disappearing into the night. Shirin kept a relentless pace, her eyes scanning, her ears straining for any sign of pursuit. Every rustle of leaves, every distant siren, sent a jolt of panic through her. They navigated the urban labyrinth for an hour, emerging onto the outskirts of Tehran. where the asphalt roads gave way to dusty tracks leading towards the Alborz Mountains. The air grew cooler, thinner. The familiar scent of oleander was replaced by the dry, earthy smell of high desert. Their first mini-crisis hit as they tried to acquire a pre-arranged vehicle. Shirin had paid a smuggler, a contact of Kawan's, for a dilapidated pickup truck to take them part of the way into the mountains. But the truck was gone. The designated meeting spot, a derelict gas station, was empty. "Commander, what now?" Mina whispered, her voice laced with fear. Shirin's jaw tightened. "The smuggler betrayed us. We walk." The news was a heavy blow. The mountains were still many kilometers away. They began their grueling trek, the faint light of the moon their only guide. The rough terrain immediately tested their endurance. Their heavy boots, designed for parade grounds, scraped over loose rocks and sharp shale. Shirin pushed them harder, faster, knowing every minute counted. Marzi and Khamenei, the oldest and strongest, took turns scouting ahead, their movements silent, efficient. By dawn, they had covered an agonizing distance. The sun rose, a fiery orb over the eastern peaks, exposing them. They found meager cover in a dry riverbed, its banks lined with sparse, thorny bushes. The heat quickly became oppressive. They rationed their water, the metallic taste of it doing little to quench their thirst. Shirin inspected their feet. Blisters were forming. Fatigue was setting in. Zoreh immediately set about patching their feet, her nimble fingers working quickly. "We must rest," Zoreh insisted. "Even a few hours, Commander." Shirin knew it was a risk, but Zoreh was right. Exhausted soldiers made mistakes. They took turns keeping watch, their rifles ready. The silence of the vast open landscape was unnerving, a stark contrast to the constant hum of Tehran. The second mini-crisis came that afternoon. A patrol of Basij volunteers, not IRGC, but still armed and zealous, passed within a kilometer of their hiding spot. Shirin saw their dust trail, heard the distant rumble of their motorcycles. Her heart clenched. They were too exposed. "Down! Stay absolutely still!" she hissed. The women flattened themselves against the dusty ground, blending with the sparse vegetation. The Basij patrol rode past, their laughter echoing faintly on the wind. Shirin held her breath. Minutes felt like hours. Only when the sound of their engines had completely faded did Shirin allow herself to exhale. That was too close. They needed to move under the cover of darkness. They resumed their climb that evening, navigating treacherous mountain paths. The darkness was absolute, save for the stars. The air was frigid, the ground unforgiving. Shirin relied on her years of navigation training, using the stars and her compass. The women moved in a tight formation, their quiet determination palpable. They communicated in a series of silent hand signals. No one spoke. Words were a luxury they could not afford. The weight of their backpacks, filled with meager supplies, felt like granite boulders. Mina stumbled twice, once scraping her knee badly on a rock. Zoreh immediately moved to her, tending the wound with antiseptic wipes. As they ascended, the temperature plummeted. The thin uniforms offered little protection against the biting mountain wind. Shirin felt the cold seep into her bones, but she pushed it aside. She had to be strong for her women. Their faces were grim, etched with exhaustion, but their eyes held a fierce, unyielding resolve. They were a unit, forged in the crucible of this impossible escape. Near midnight, they reached a pre-arranged rendezvous point, a small, crumbling stone hut high in the mountains. Kawan was there, his face weathered, his eyes shrewd. He greeted Shirin with a curt nod. "Commander, you are late." "The first smuggler vanished," Shirin replied, her voice hoarse. Kawan grunted. "Expected. These mountains eat promises." He surveyed the women. "They are strong. They are Zainab," Shirin stated, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Kawan nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "Good. We move now. Border is 3 hours hard climb. Patrols are heavy tonight. Pasdaran are active." Pasdaran, the IRGC. The thought sent a fresh wave of fear through Shirin. The climb with Kawan was relentless. He moved with the effortless grace of a mountain goat, navigating paths Shirin barely registered. The air grew even thinner, making every breath a struggle. Her lungs burned, her legs ached with an excruciating constant pain. The silver Mizan pendant dug into her chest. She clung to it. The rock faces around them were stark, unforgiving. The wind howled a mournful tune. Then, the crackle of a distant radio. A faint beam of light sweeping across the rugged terrain, far below. An IRGC border patrol. They were close. Too close. "They are looking for you," Kawan whispered, his voice grim. "Fast now. We must move. Higher." Shirin pushed her women, urging them to find reserves of strength they didn't know they possessed. Their muscles screamed in protest. Their lungs burned. Mina stumbled again, falling hard. Zorre was there instantly, pulling her up. "Keep moving, Mina." "Almost there." They scrambled over jagged rocks, their hands raw, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat. The cold sweat of fear mixed with the exertion. Shirin could hear the distant voices of the patrol now, carried on the wind. They were closing in. Suddenly, a shot echoed through the night. It cracked like thunder, not at them, but somewhere close by. Kawan swore under his breath. Another group, distraction, lucky for us. Shirin felt a cold wave wash over her. It could have been them. They scaled a final steep incline, their bodies screaming in protest. The crest of the mountain finally appeared, silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky. Kawan pointed. "That way, down the other side. Iraqi Kurdistan. Freedom." Shirin looked at her women. Their faces were bruised, exhausted, but in their eyes, she saw a glimmer of hope. They had made it. They had crossed the border. The descent was almost as dangerous as the climb. Loose scree, steep drops. Shirin, ever the commander, made sure each woman navigated the treacherous terrain safely. The sun began to paint the sky with hues of purple and orange as they finally reached the valley floor on the other side. The air felt different here. Lighter. Freer. Shirin took a deep, shuddering breath. They were out. They had disappeared. 9 women, from Khamenei's personal guard, had vanished into the night. They were alive. The valley floor was flat, dusty, but dotted with sparse, hardy vegetation. Shirin felt the first rays of the morning sun warm her face. It was a sun different from the one that rose over Tehran, a sun that promised something new. The air, though still carrying the dry scent of the high desert, felt lighter, less oppressive. She could hear the chirping of unseen birds, a sound that had been absent from their journey through the desolate mountains. Shirin pulled off her black chador, letting the cool breeze rustle her hair, a sensation she hadn't felt in decades. It was a simple act, but profoundly liberating. She watched as her women, one by one, followed her lead, shedding their oppressive outer garments. Their faces, no longer hidden, were bruised and streaked with dirt, but held a raw, radiant hope. Kawan led them to a small, hidden encampment nestled among some low hills. A few tents, a crackling fire, the scent of strong tea. Other figures, men and women, emerged from the tents, their faces weathered, their eyes holding a mixture of caution and understanding. Refugees, smugglers, survivors. They offered the women water, bread, and thin, sweet tea. Shirin felt the warmth spread through her body, chasing away the deep chill of the mountain night. Marzi collapsed onto a rough blanket, tears finally streaming down her face. Zorre held her, murmuring comforting words. Mina, the youngest, sat silently, tracing patterns in the dust with her finger, a small, tentative smile playing on her lips. Shirin watched them, a profound sense of relief washing over her. She had done it. She had brought them to safety. The weight she had carried for weeks, for months, finally began to lift. The local Kurdish community, despite their own struggles, extended a quiet hospitality. They knew what it meant to flee, to seek refuge. Shirin spent the next few days resting, eating, and observing. She learned of the informal networks, the pathways to seeking asylum. They were safe here, for now, but this was only the first step. One afternoon, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, Shirin walked a little distance from the camp. She held the silver mizan pendant in her hand. The metal felt cool, almost soothing. It was no longer a symbol of betrayal. It was a symbol of her rediscovered purpose, of true justice. Justice for Zara, justice for her women, for Parvaneh. She remembered her Baba's words, not the ones about the revolution, but the older ones, about universal truth, about standing up for what was right. Even when it was difficult, he would have understood. He would have been proud. She watched the sun dip below the horizon, feeling the vastness of the sky above her, a sky unburdened by the shadow of the Supreme Leader's image. It was a humbling, exhilarating feeling. She was no longer a commander of Khamenei's guard. She was simply Shirin, a woman, a refugee, free, but with a new mission. The camp offered a fragile sanctuary. Shirin and her women spent weeks there, recovering their strength, both physical and spiritual. The shared trauma, the quiet camaraderie, cemented their bond even further. They were no longer just a unit. They were a family, bound by shared sacrifice and a common future. They began to shed the rigid posture of soldiers, their shoulders relaxing, their laughter becoming more frequent, more genuine. Marzi sketched the rugged mountain scenery in a small notebook Kawan had given her, her artistic dreams reawakening. Zore, with her gentle hands, helped tend to the small medical needs of the camp's inhabitants. Mina, once so timid, found her voice, asking endless questions about the outside world. Shirin, too, found herself changing. The constant vigilance, the fear, slowly receded, replaced by a cautious optimism. She began to speak with her women, truly speak, not just issue orders. They discussed their past, their beliefs, their shattered illusions. They processed the trauma of their escape, the horrors they had witnessed. Shirin listened, offering comfort, guidance, and sometimes simply a silent, understanding presence. She felt the heavy mantle of her former command lift, replaced by the lighter, yet more profound responsibility of leading them not as soldiers, but as individuals towards a new life. Through Kawan's network, they established contact with a human rights organization operating in Iraqi Kurdistan. The process was slow, painstaking, filled with paperwork and interviews, but there was hope. They were no longer nameless, faceless fugitives. They were individuals seeking asylum, telling their stories. Shirin decided they would apply for asylum in Germany, known for its robust refugee support systems and open society. It offered a chance for a true new beginning, far from the shadows of the regime. Shirin's weekly video calls with Khamenei took on a new dimension. She could finally speak, in guarded terms, of her new situation. Khamenei, mature beyond her years, understood. Her voice, filled with relief and a touch of awe, said, "Mama, I always knew you had a bigger heart than they allowed." Shirin felt a warmth spread through her chest. Her daughter had seen the real her, even through the carefully constructed facade. The 9 women prepared for the next leg of their journey. They were no longer a military unit, but a group of determined women, each carrying their past, but looking towards a future built on freedom and self-determination. They would continue to support each other, to be each other's strength. Shirin, holding her mise-en pendant, understood its true meaning now. It was not about a regime's justice, but about an individual's unwavering moral compass, guiding her towards truth and compassion. Their stories, she knew, would be powerful. 9 women, once guardians of the system, now its living proof of betrayal. Their defection was more than just an escape. It was a statement, a quiet, defiant act of resistance against a regime that demanded blind obedience. They had chosen life, they had chosen freedom, and they would never be silenced again. Their new lives would be built on the principle of Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, woman, life, freedom. Not just a chant, but a way of being. Would you have done the same? Tell me in the comments.